The Starlight Haven Motel crouched low on the edge of Route 66, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat, casting a soft violet glow over the cracked pavement of the parking lot. The desert air was heavy with the scent of dust and distant rain, carried on a breeze that whispered through the sagebrush, tugging at the hem of my dress. I stood in the doorway of room 12, my cigarette glowing faintly, its ember a tiny star against the vast, inky sky. A truck rumbled past on the highway, its headlights carving a fleeting path through the dark before fading into silence. I exhaled, watching the smoke twist upward, mingling with the constellations I'd never learned to name. My name's Rose. I'm telling you this because some nights are like photographs, sharp, vivid, impossible to forget. That night was one of them. It was late July, the kind of heat that seeps into your bones, making your thoughts sluggish and your skin restless. I'd been working this stretch of road for 7 years, from Oklahoma to Arizona, each motel a temporary refuge, each room a stage for someone else's story. I was good at it, good at reading people, good at giving them what they wanted while keeping myself locked away. But that night wasn't about what I was good at. It was about him. I flicked my cigarette to the gravel, grinding it under the heel of my worn boots. The motel's office light glowed faintly across the lot, where the night clerk, was probably knitting under the hum of a flickering fluorescent bulb. I adjusted my dress, navy blue, simple, clinging just enough to do the job, and checked my phone. 10:02 p.m. He was late, but not by much. His text had come through earlier, clipped and cryptic, room 12, 10 p.m. Be there. No name, no pleasantries, just a demand that felt more like a plea. I'd been in this game long enough to know that meant something, secrets, maybe, or a man who carried them like stones. I stepped back inside, the door creaking shut, sealing me in with the musty air and the weight of 100 other nights. Room 12 was like every other motel room on this road, faded wallpaper with a geometric pattern, a bed that groaned under the slightest weight, and a lamp on the nightstand casting a warm, honeyed glow that softened the room's edges. The curtains were thin, blue, swaying gently as the desert wind slipped through a crack in the window. The air smelled of old smoke and time, a scent that clung to everything, including me. I sat on the edge of the bed, catching my reflection in the chipped mirror across the room. My blonde hair was loose, falling past my shoulders in soft waves, and my blue eyes stared back, weary but sharp, holding stories I'd never tell. Not even to you. I lit another cigarette, the match flaring briefly before settling into a steady flame. The clock ticked to 10:05. Waiting always made me restless, stirring memories I'd rather leave buried. I thought about my father, his hands rough from years at the mill, telling me to stay in school, to make something of myself. I thought about the night I left home at 18, my backpack heavy with dreams and a bus ticket to nowhere. I thought about my first night working this job, the way I'd stood in a motel bathroom, staring at my reflection, promising it was just for a little while. That was 7 years ago, and the road had a way of stretching time until it felt like forever. A soft knock at the door pulled me back, my heart kicking up, not from fear, but from something else, something alive and unfamiliar. I stood, smoothing my dress, and crossed the room, my boots clicking on the linoleum. I opened the door, and there he was. He stood in the doorway, framed by the neon sign's violet glow, his face half hidden in shadow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows and hair the color of wet sand, much like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes were green, deep and restless, like a forest after rain, carrying a weight I couldn't name. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked at me with a quiet intensity that made my breath catch, like he was seeing past the dress, the makeup, the walls I'd built to survive. "You're Rose?" His voice was low. steady, with a hint of gravel that spoke of long nights and longer roads. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "You're late." He glanced at the clock as he passed, his boots scuffing softly on the carpet. "Got lost. This road's tricky." I closed the door, the latch clicking, and the room felt smaller, the air thicker, like it was holding its breath. He didn't sit, just stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, staring out at the neon sign as it flickered, its hum a steady pulse in the quiet. I watched him, noting the way his shoulders were set, the way his fingers twitched slightly, like he was holding on to something he couldn't let go. He wasn't like the others, no easy grin, no rushed agenda, just a stillness that felt like it could shift the world. "Want a drink?" I asked, gesturing to the bottle of gin on the dresser. It was cheap, but it served its purpose, filling the silences that stretched too long. He shook his head, his eyes still on the window. "Not tonight." I sat on the bed, crossing my legs, trying to read him. He was different, and that made me uneasy. I was used to predictable men who knew what they wanted and took it without asking questions. But this guy? He was a question, one I wasn't sure I wanted to answer. I lit another cigarette, the smoke curling around me like a shield. "You got a name?" I asked, expecting him to dodge it. He turned then, his eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "James," he said, the name soft but deliberate, like he'd chosen it for me. I tilted my head, a small smile tugging at my lips. "James. That real?" He smiled back, just a flicker, but it was enough to make my chest ache. "Real enough." We sat in silence for a while, the neon sign's hum blending with the distant growl of a truck on the highway. I was used to silences, but this one was different, alive, heavy with things unsaid. I watched his hands, still in his pockets, strong and steady, like they'd held something precious once and never forgotten how. I wondered what they'd touched, what they'd lost. I wondered why I cared. "You don't fit here," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a spark in the dark. I laughed, sharp and bitter, the sound echoing in the small room. "You don't know me." "I know enough." His eyes were on me now, steady, unyielding, like he could see the cracks in my armor. "This place, it's not where you're supposed to be." I wanted to snap back, to tell him he had no right, but his words hit something deep, something I'd buried under years of motel rooms and late nights. I looked away, my throat tight, the cigarette burning low. "You don't know what I'm supposed to be." He didn't answer, just watched me, and in that moment, I felt exposed, like he'd peeled back every layer I'd built to survive. I stood, needing to move, needing to break the spell. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside, the neon light painting my skin in shades of violet and gold. The desert stretched out beyond, vast and unforgiving, and I wondered if it would ever let me go. "Why are you here, James?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be, barely audible over the hum of the sign. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were careful, like he was stepping around something fragile. "I'm looking for something. Thought I might find it here." I turned, leaning against the windowsill, studying him. "That's not an answer." He smiled again, that small, fleeting thing that made my heart stumble. "It's all I've got." We talked as the night wore on, not about the big things, not about the truths that hung between us, but about the small ones that filled the spaces. He told me about a river in Colorado where he'd fished as a kid, about a diner in Texas with coffee so strong it could wake the dead. I told him about the time I'd hitchhiked to a music festival in New Mexico, how I'd danced under the stars until dawn. We laughed, and it felt like a secret, like something I hadn't earned. His eyes softened when he looked at me, like he was seeing someone I'd forgotten how to be. Hours passed, the gin untouched, the bed a silent witness to a night that wasn't what I'd expected. He didn't touch me, didn't try, but every glance, every pause, felt more intimate than any touch I'd known. I found myself imagining what it would be like to reach for his hand, to feel the warmth of his skin, to ask him to stay. But I didn't. That wasn't how this worked. As dawn crept through the curtains, painting the room in soft grays, he stood, pulling a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket. He held it out to me, his fingers brushing mine, warm and steady, sending a shiver through me I couldn't explain. "Keep this," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Don't open it yet." I took it, my heart racing. "What's in it?" He didn't answer, just looked at me, his eyes tracing my face like he was memorizing every line. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut, leaving me with the hum of the neon sign and a weight in my hand I didn't understand. I stood there, clutching the paper, my mind a storm of questions. Who was James? Why had he come? And what was in that note, burning against my palm like a secret I wasn't sure I could carry? The Starlight Haven Motel faded into the haze of my memory, but that night clung to me like the scent of rain on asphalt. I carried the note in my purse, its edges softening with every day I didn't open it. I told myself I'd forget him, that he was just another shadow passing through, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his, green, restless, haunted. I saw the way his hands stayed still, like they were afraid to reach for something they'd lost. I saw the way he looked at me, like I was more than the girl in room 12, more than the life I'd built to survive. Weeks passed, and I kept moving, motel to motel, town to town, the endless ribbon of Route 66 stretching out like a promise I'd stopped believing in. I worked, I smiled, I played the part, but it felt hollower now, like I was wearing someone else's skin. The men I met blurred together, their voices a dull hum against the memory of his. I started to wonder if I'd imagined him, if he was just a flicker of neon light, a dream born from the desert and my own loneliness. It was mid-September when I saw him again, at a motel called the Twilight Oasis, just past the New Mexico border. The air was cooler now, sharp with the promise of fall, and the neon sign above the motel flickered in a slow, mournful rhythm, casting a soft orange glow over the parking lot. I was outside, leaning against my old Dodge, the metal cold against my back, smoking and watching the stars. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're holding your breath. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, the crunch of gravel like a heartbeat in the dark. He stepped into the light, same flannel shirt, same sandy hair falling over his eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me, like he'd known I'd be here, like the road had pulled us back together. "Rose," he said, my name soft and heavy, like it carried a weight I couldn't see. I straightened, tossing my cigarette to the ground. "James." He smiled, that small, fleeting thing that made my chest ache. "You remembered. You're not easy to forget." The words slipped out, raw and honest, and I looked away, the neon light painting my cheeks in shades of orange. He stepped closer, stopping just out of reach, his hands in his pockets. The light caught the lines on his face, deeper now, like the road had carved them there. "I didn't mean to find you again," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the wind. "But I'm glad I did." I laughed, unsteady and sharp. "You don't just find someone on this road. You were looking. Maybe." His eyes met mine, and I felt that same pull, that same sense of being seen, like he could see the girl I'd been before the motels, before the nights that wore me down. Maybe I was. I wanted to ask him why, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, James?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was looking for something I didn't know I had. "I want you to know you're not stuck here," he said finally, gesturing at the motel, the road, the life I'd been living. "I want you to believe you can leave." I turned away, staring at the highway, the lights of a passing truck blurring into streaks. "You don't get to decide that for me." "I'm not deciding." His voice was closer now, and I realized he'd moved, standing just behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "I'm just telling you what I see." I turned to face him, my heart pounding, and for a moment, we were all there was, the neon sign, the desert wind, the space between us alive with something I couldn't name. I wanted to reach for him, to bridge that gap, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled the note from my purse, holding it up. "What's this, James? Why'd you give it to me?" He looked at the note, his expression unreadable. "It's a door," he said. "But you have to choose to open it." I laughed, bitter and raw. "You don't know what I'm ready for." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, just for a second, and it was like a spark in the dark, lighting up every nerve in my body. "I know you're scared," he said softly. "So am I." Before I could respond, he pulled another piece of paper from his pocket, this one smaller, folded tightly. He pressed it into my hand, his fingers lingering against mine, warm and steady. "Read this one first," he said. "Then decide what to do with the other." I looked down at the paper, my heart racing. "What's in it?" "Me," he said simply, and then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the parking lot, leaving me with 2 pieces of paper and 1,000 questions. I stood there, the papers heavy in my hands, the neon sign buzzing above me. I didn't open them, not yet. I was afraid, not of him, but of what he represented. A chance, maybe, to be something more than the girl in room 12. I sat on the hood of my Dodge, lighting another cigarette, the stars watching me like they knew something I didn't. The road stretched out before me, endless and uncertain, and I wondered if I'd ever find the courage to follow it. The Twilight Oasis Motel was behind me now, but the papers stayed with me, tucked in my purse like secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. I drove west, the road unfolding under my tires, the neon signs blurring into memories. I couldn't shake James, his voice, his eyes, the way he'd made me feel like I was more than the sum of my nights. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who drew pictures of the stars in her notebook, who believed in love and second chances. She was still there, somewhere, buried under years of motels and men, under the weight of choices I couldn't take back. James had seen her, somehow, and now he was asking me to find her again. I stopped at a motel called the Horizon's End, just inside California. The neon sign was faint, its letters half burned out, casting a soft blue light over the parking lot. I sat in my room, the papers on the nightstand, the lamp's light warm and golden, like a memory. The air smelled of dust and salt, the ocean close now, its rhythm a steady pulse in the distance. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling toward the ceiling, and stared at the papers, my heart pounding. I picked up the second paper, the one he'd given me at the Twilight Oasis. It was small, folded tightly, the edges worn from being carried too long. I unfolded it, my hands shaking, and found a short note, the handwriting steady but hurried, like he'd written it in a moment of desperation. "Rose. My name's James, but there's more to it than that. I've been running from a life I can't fix, from mistakes I can't undo. I saw you in room 12, and for the first time in years, I wanted to stop running. You're not just a light in the dark, you're the kind of light that makes a man believe he can change. I don't know if I can, but I need you to know you made me want to try." The other note is the rest of it. It's not just my story, it's a chance for yours to start over. But it's up to you. James. I read it again, my eyes burning, my chest tight. James. He'd seen me, really seen me, in a way no one else ever had. I set the note down and reached for the first one, the one from that night at the Starlight Haven. It felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of both our lives. I opened it, my breath catching, and found a single sentence inside. Find me at the edge of the world, Rose. I'll be waiting where the road stops. Below it was an address, a beach in a town called Ocean's End, just a few hours away. I stared at it, my mind spinning. He was asking me to follow him, to leave this life behind, to take a chance on something I didn't understand. I thought about the road, the motels, the nights that had shaped me. I thought about my father, how he'd told me to keep dreaming, even when the world tried to take it away. And I thought about James, his quiet strength, the way he'd made me believe I could be more. I packed my bag that night, the notes tucked safely in my purse. The Dodge's engine roared to life, and I drove west, the desert giving way to the ocean's salt and spray. The road felt different now, like it was leading me somewhere instead of just away. I thought about James every mile, his face sharper in my mind than the neon signs fading behind me. I thought about the life I was leaving, the weight of it falling away with every mile. Ocean's End was a small town, the kind of place where the ocean sang louder than the people. The address led me to a beach, the sand cool under my boots, the waves crashing against the shore like a heartbeat. I walked to the water's edge, the wind cold against my skin, and waited, my heart pounding. But he didn't come. I stood there for hours, the notes in my hands, the ocean stretching out before me, endless and unforgiving. I realized then that he wasn't coming, that he'd never been coming. Maybe he was still running, from whatever he'd been running from that first night. Maybe he was a dream, a story I told myself to keep going. But as the sun sank into the sea, painting the sky in shades of fire and ash, I felt something settle inside me. I'd come here because of him, but I'd stay for me. I opened the first note again, reading his words one last time, find me at the edge of the world, Rose. I'll be waiting where the road stops. I folded it carefully and let it go, watching it drift into the waves, carried away by the tide. The second note I kept, tucking it into my purse, a reminder of the girl I was finding again. I don't know if I'll ever see James again. I don't know if he was real, or if he was just a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I'd forgotten. But I'm here, at the end of Route 66, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm free. The road brought me to him, and he brought me to myself. And maybe that's enough.